Welcome to The Hop, a marketing podcast with a business edge. I'm your host, Matthew Taylor Farrington, co-founder of Purple Bunny Marketing. Here, we cut through the fluff and bring you real marketing and business insights, covering everything from branding to digital strategy, business automation, IT, cybersecurity, and even some leadership. No fluff, no jargon, just smart insights. So let's hop to it. This week on the latest episode of The Hop, we are joined by Martin from BizGuard. And today we're going to talk more again around cybersecurity. We obviously talked last time, I guess, at a more broad sense. But today we want to get more specific around it and maybe talk more around how cybersecurity can impact you from a social media perspective and maybe some things that business owners don't necessarily understand about getting hacked via social media and the implications that has.
Yeah, for sure.
So thanks for coming along. Thanks for
Happy to be here.
Joining us, having a chat. So I guess, why is cybersecurity becoming a hot target amongst the criminals? Why are they now targeting social media?
There's a couple of layers to that. I think fundamentally, social media is about trust.
Yes.
And one of the core things that hackers like to attack is anywhere that there is trust established, because it gives them an easier route to defraud people.
Yes.
But the other flip side of that is also a lot of business owners still don't view social media as a critical part of their business. And
Yes.
so they access it with personal accounts. It's not secured as well as a business asset.
Yes.
And so it's low-hanging fruit for a lot of attackers.
Agreed. We deal with that on a regular basis too, where I guess business owners shrug their shoulders almost, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll just make a new profile and go from there. But there's a lot of work that goes into that, creating that. So
Absolutely.
all right. Everyone's heard the stories like, my Facebook account got hacked. But what are the real risks for business when that does happen?
So what we see in almost all cases where, say, Facebook gets hacked is that the thing that gets hacked is not the page. The thing that gets hacked is the user account that has access or admin access to that page.
Yes.
And what we're seeing a lot is business owners are still using personal accounts, and their staff are using personal accounts in order to access those Facebook pages.
Yes.
And I see that all the time, especially where someone maybe puts a VA on or someone to help them with content in a casual capacity, and
Yes.
they'll say, I'll just invite my personal account to be a page admin. And because they don't understand the different permission levels as well, they just give full admin access, and that gives someone the rights to pretty much take over the whole page.
Yes.
And that's not unique to Facebook. That's with all the different social media platforms. We see similar sort of things playing out.
Yes.
And then, not everyone secures their personal accounts the way that they should with multi-factor authentication and that kind of thing.
Agreed. And I guess the risk to business is, if you have set your account up properly, and you have a business portfolio with all your assets inside one, they have access to your ad account. They have access to all that pixel data. So they have access to that data of the people who have been visiting your site. They can retarget those people and serve them their own ads. And all that hard work that you've paid for is now being used by somebody else.
Well, and it's problematic because they're not just able to run up a bill, because Facebook does have some measures where it'll send you invoices and you at least know it's happening.
Correct. Or you can create thresholds and stuff. But yes,
exactly right. But it's more about what they're doing with those ads, because they're not just hitting go on one of your existing campaigns.
No,
They're
correct.
most likely swapping out links so that those links go to their own phishing or malware pages.
Yep.
And you're going to have your branding attached to those hacks.
Correct. And, you could end up with customer complaints saying, well, I bought it from you. And the reality is they haven't.
Absolutely.
But that's happened. And it just creates, I guess, distrust for people when in that space.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
All right. So what would you then say are some non-negotiables when it comes to security steps that business could take to protect their social media?
So I'm going to focus very heavily on Facebook.
Yep.
And the reason I'm going to do that is, there's a lot of other social media out there, but it's still the most targeted one in what we see. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that Facebook is notoriously the slowest to respond when you log a request with them. So if you do get
Yes.
hacked and you say, hey, we need help recovering this, the attackers know that Facebook are not going to get back to you for days, weeks, sometimes even months.
Correct.
To actually correct that. So
Yes.
It is the biggest target, and it's also got the biggest surface area because there's so many nooks and crannies where they can actually get in and then leave behind things that you then have to go and find.
Yes.
In terms of what you need to do to secure it, we harp on about MFA, multi-factor authentication, an awful
Yes.
lot. It is important. It's not always turned on by default. I actually realized a couple of years ago that I didn't have it turned on because my account was so old, it predated them actually offering it. And it never prompted me to enable it. So it just wasn't even a thought that occurred to me because everything was automatically signing in all the time.
Yep.
But I didn't have that set up. And so when I finally set that up, I went, oh, actually, this is a really good thing.
Yes.
And then I went through all the different settings, and suddenly I'm realizing that now I'm getting prompted more to say, hey, is this actually you? Which is what I wanted. It just wasn't front of mind. So making sure that's enabled on your own account that you use for your Facebook is important. Mm-hmm. And then obviously making sure that anyone you give admin access to your pages or your social assets, they need to have it turned on too. That's often something you can't control because they're going to be using their own managed account to do it.
Yes.
But again, just making sure that they understand the importance of it, even getting them to sign a little bit of paper to say, yes, I have MFA enabled, however serious you want to be about it.
Correct, yeah.
It's a really good move. And then obviously making sure they don't all have admin access because a lot of the time they don't need that full level.
Yes.
Or maybe they're only going to do social posting. They probably don't also need ad manager access. So just limiting the level of access they've got can also help limit the damage if they do get hacked.
Agreed. And I think another thing on that is also make sure that you're not the only admin on the account too. So that if you as an admin do get hacked, there's another admin that can quickly kick your profile off and prevent any more further disruption to your Facebook ads, your MetaPix or whatever it might be. But you can avoid that disruption. It's something that we definitely encourage clients when setting up their business portfolios or going in. You'd be surprised, well, probably not, but the amount of clients that we go into and don't have business portfolio set up, or when they do have it set up, like you said, everyone's got admin access or only one person's got admin access, and it's just a nightmare to kind of go through and make sure that it is set up correctly. So.
Definitely. And there's one additional thing that I will suggest, and this is really controversial and really inconvenient for a lot of people.
Yes.
But best practice technically would be to not use any personal accounts at all and to only have accounts that are separately used for business only. The thing that we're seeing the most is the way people get compromised is typically because they're on their home computer and they get hacked on their home computer or they get phished on their mobile phone. And if you're constantly signed in using your personal logins on social accounts you're using every day, it's much more likely you'll get caught in that. Mm-hmm. Whereas having a business login set up separately and making that your page admin is definitely a better way to go. Unfortunately, it's a real pain in the bum to use because you're constantly having to flip between those profiles.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually think it's the best thing to do if you've got staff doing it. You then control the email account. You own the email account. So if that staff member does leave your business and you need to get access to it, you can reset the password, gain access to that social channel if necessary, or whatever that user may have done. Absolutely. So you can see it. So I do think from a business perspective, having it done under your business email with a business-related page created that they use to access that's separate to their personal one is very important, definitely. And I guess I can share a horror story, around that, is that I did have a client, fairly large client, a staff member who had access directly to the business portfolio at full admin, who clicked on a link. And it gave them full access to everything. And I can tell you that they ran up a really, really big ad bill, close to $50,000.
Oh, geez.
And it was because this client has multiple ad accounts, multiple pages, multiple businesses, and they actually went through every ad account and just ran up a bill on every single one. So when one stopped, and it actually took them a couple of days to report it before they realized that they were hacked. Yep. And the other worst part was it actually leaked through. They actually managed to get back in via that to a partner's account. Which is, people like us that are agencies, we connect via partner access and stuff like that. And they were actually able to Trojan their way through and get through to everything. So it was quite diabolical. And a lot of things had to get shut down and changed and moved. But I can tell you now, it can hurt when it does happen. And it's very much important to make sure that you have it all set up correctly, linked correctly.
For sure. I think the other thing too that people often don't think of, and this is different from business to business. We talked about the potential costs, but there's also the potential to lose revenue, especially if social is an important channel for generating money in your business.
100%.
And all of a sudden, you've just potentially lost your 10, 20, 50, 100,000 followers that you've got that you're normally pushing product to, or that you have an inbound revenue stream from, and all of a sudden that just stops. And that can be catastrophic for a business.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it's just 3 days that it's down, depending on what your revenue is, it could hurt. So there is some great impacts to making sure that it is set up correctly. All right. I guess, is there a difference in security measures depending on the platform? So, we've talked a lot about Facebook, but, we've got other platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok and all those other ones. And I know they've all got their own version of security things when you log in. But is there some different measures that you should be looking at, or is it all relatively the same?
Look, the principles are all the same. How they implement those principles is a little bit different. Really just... Again, MFA. Make sure you've got multi-factor turned on is a really important
We can't say it enough. Yes.
Exactly right. So that it's not going to stop everything, but it's a really important measure, and it's a simple one that all the platforms do support in their own way.
Yes.
If you get the choice, some platforms support different kinds of multi-factor authentication. So in some of them, you can use an authenticator app that generates a code. Or that you have to tap a button to approve a login. In others, they'll send you a text message.
Yep.
It's pretty rare still in Australia, but we are seeing more SIM swapping attacks where people can intercept text messages. So generally, we're trying to steer people away from SMS if we can.
Yep.
But yeah, look, Authenticator app is still a pretty good way to do it. And the other one that's actually really important, and I think most of the major platforms are doing it now, is whenever there's a new sign-in from an unrecognized device or IP address, you'll actually get a security alert to say, hey, this is an unrecognized sign-in.
Or location as well.
Or location, yeah. And it's really important to just jump on those. Like, don't just swipe past that if that comes up. Like, that's a potential panic stations. And it's easy to get desensitized if you've got lots of different people that are on mobile constantly and logging in from different places. But it's super, super important to always keep up with those, because that can be an early sign someone's hacked in.
Yeah, agreed. I think the location one's really good. We work with clients all around the country, and we get those alerts, and it's like, oh, and then, once you do the check, you can confirm whether it is or isn't. And I can say, and we utilize your services. You found that right at the start too. You caught someone who had logged into some stuff of ours, and, turned out it was legitimate, but we did see that had happened. So
yeah, for sure.
I do think it's important. All right. What tools or processes do you recommend, I guess, for regular checking and maintaining? Is there any tools that we can use? Is there any tools that you suggest maybe using to keep passwords protected or any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, look, I think within social media land, there might well be some security tools that I'm not familiar with. I don't really deal with that on a daily basis, but definitely just in terms of general cyber hygiene, it applies to everything, including social media. The biggest tool every organization should have these days is a password manager.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where it's almost like this escalating kind of maturity thing that we see, where people start by writing passwords on paper, and then they realize that's not such a great idea. And then they do something almost worse, and they have the password spreadsheet that all the staff share. That's being digital actually is more dangerous than even just using
or just
Post-it
a Word
notes.
document, and that worries me too.
Exactly right. But then we generally see people graduate to at least, well, let's use the built-in password manager in Chrome or in the web browser. Unfortunately, that's also not very safe, because it's a really common thing. When you get malware on your computer, they'll actually steal those passwords, and they're not actually protected very well. Unless you're on Apple. Apple does a pretty good job of it with their built-in password manager capability. It used to be called Keychain, and now it's Passwords.
Yes.
That's pretty solid, but the stuff that's built into Chrome or built into Firefox, built into Edge, like, it's not that great.
Yes.
So using a real password manager is actually really important. And that also, if you're using a business-grade password manager, lets you securely share passwords with particular staff members.
Yes.
So by doing all of that, you're making it that much harder for someone to steal the password in the first place.
Correct, yeah. And we definitely do. We saw the benefit of that, I think year one in our business, where we were like, hang on, we're not keeping passwords in spreadsheets.
Yep.
That's not how that's going to work. And we just invested straight away in a bit of software called 1Password that we use. And each user can have access to different things. We have different vaults within that as to what level of access and authority you have control over. Yep. I think it's very important that business really do consider those types of tools. I know they're a little small cost that's there that adds to that IT cost, but it protects you, and it avoids the potential for a $50,000 bill when Facebook decides to credit your credit card for not realizing that your ad account's been spending that you didn't spend. So
that's exactly right. And there's a lot of benefit too in using those business grade ones where everyone gets their own login, because we do see it a little bit where people are at least using a password manager, but all the staff share the one login.
Yes.
It's better than nothing, but it's still not great. And a couple of the really key things that we see are when people leave, you all of a sudden have to reset the password, and that's a pain for everybody. You can't really tell who's accessed what. So a lot of password managers, especially when you sign up for the business plan, will keep an audit log of who's accessing what passwords and when. Correct. So if anything nefarious happens, you've got that audit trail that you can kind of go back, or your IT people can go back and check who accessed what. It's worth spending the extra couple of bucks a month to get the business ones.
Agreed. 100%. There we go. I worked it in for the next episode. All right. Last thing. If someone is hacked, what is the first thing they should do?
Look, all the basic stuff is immediately reset passwords, make sure the MFA is still there. A lot of the time hackers will remove your MFA and add their own, so try to clean that up as best you can.
Yes.
Sometimes you can still get in from a device that's already signed in anyway, so you might have to go to a specific computer where you were last signed in to do some of these things. Check all your admins. They love adding themselves as admins to your ad manager and your business manager and your pages, so check all of those are right and remove anyone that you don't recognize. And then probably the last thing, which is a bit of a hidden one, Facebook's the worst for this, but most social media platforms have a similar concept of being able to have applications that actually link into your account. And there are places in the security area in Facebook settings and in a lot of other social networks as well, where you can check what apps have been authorized. We're not seeing a lot of hackers utilizing that just yet for persistence, but we're seeing that obviously a lot with things like Google breaches and Microsoft breaches. It's a really common attack tactic. So I think it's just a matter of time before hackers wise up and start using that extensively with social media as well. And that can give them access even after you kick them out of everything else. They can still actually get data access into your platform or even access to do stuff in there without them even having a user account.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think time is the most important one. Like you said,
jump on it.
Have those when you do get that notification that says, hey, you logged in from a different location, check it. If it isn't legit, then go do those steps straight away.
Absolutely.
Don't risk it.
And most of these attacks are still done by human beings. So even once we see there's sometimes a delay between when an account gets first compromised and when we start seeing the first actual activity in the account. And a lot of the time that's because maybe you got phished and the phishing process is automatic, but that then flicks your credentials to a human who's got to go and actually log in and do stuff. So sometimes you're lucky and you do have a little bit of a time window. If you're unlucky, they might be straight in. So there is absolutely no time to waste with something like that.
100%. 100%. Got it in right at the end.
Multiple times.
Correct. All right, perfect. Well, we hope that some of that information has been relevant to you today and that it will help you to make sure that you do manage and protect your security when it comes to social media, because it is becoming more and more fundamental to business every day. So It is important. Thank you for coming in.
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thanks
Having
for
another
having me.
chat. I'm sure we'll get you along again for another chat. Maybe more down the IT realm as we move more into that business side of things on the podcast.
Yeah, happy to talk on any subject. I've never met a soapbox I didn't like.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So that's a wrap on this episode of The Hop, a marketing podcast with a business edge. So if you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform and connect with us on social media. Have you got something to share? Apply to be a guest on our show. Just head to our website and let's have a chat. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep your marketing smart, your business sharp, and your brand hopping.